Hello, Rubs. We're back with Dagny, Juel, Przybyszewska, The Woman and the Myth, a 1991 book by Mary K. Norseng. We are on chapter 8. Let me move this up so this chair will stop groaning. Chapter 8, The Sisters. And these are the sisters: Dagny, Astrid, Gudrun, and Ragnhild. Think how sweet all of you always were toward Dagny. Yes, that sibling love you shared, I have otherwise never seen. Completely unique. Moya Vogt to Ragnhild after Dagny's death, December 3rd, 1901. Dear Stasho, none of us has a forgiving word for Dagny in this. Gudrun to Stash after Dagny left him, March 8th, 1900. I am so happy that beloved Papa did not experience this. It would have upset him so enormously and insurmountably. Astrid to Stash after Dagny left him, May 7th, 1900. You knew Dagny's and my relationship to each other, and know how I am suffering now. Ragnhild to Munch after Dagny's death, July 3rd, 1901. Dagny was the second of four sisters, all born within 5 years of each other. Her younger brother died at the age of 1, as if a reflection of the contradictions inherent in their parents. The sisters split into two pairs, the one set drawn to convention, the other to the opposite extreme. They inevitably came into conflict, yet they were, and they remained, extremely close. Gudrun. Dagny grew up in the shadow of her imposing older sister, Gudrun. Born in 1866, 1 year before Dagny, Gudrun was musically very talented, exceptionally beautiful. She was attractive, I don't know about beautiful. Temperamental and vain. It was Gudrun who said to the Swedish king when he asked if there were more beautiful girls in Kongsvinger, "There are four of us." She was also reputed to have said, when asked if there was anything of note in Lund, "Yes, the cathedral and myself. Of the four sisters, she was the classic beauty." I would tend to agree. She's the only one that's good looking. Dagny and Gudrun chose diametrically opposed ways to live their lives. The one so radically, the other so conservatively. Unlike Dagny, Gudrun pursued her academic studies, attending a private academy in Stockholm, and though she supposedly played the piano with greater virtuosity than Dagny, she never took it up professionally. At the age of 22, Gudrun married Wilhelm Westrup, the son of wealthy landowners from Lund, and became part of Lund's high society. As Dagny sought herself in the cultural bohemia of the continent, Gudrun sought herself in the upper class world of Sweden. Ultimately, though, these two older sisters shared a common dissatisfaction, for neither woman seemed to find what she was looking for. Gudrun is the same as always, nervous and frantic, so that you can cry blood over her, Ragnhild wrote in 1905. What's up, bruv? Fine people and clothes are their only real passion. She also wrote at a time when she was exasperated with Gudrun and Astrid, September 16th, 1897. The judgment was no doubt partially true. In contrast to Dagny and their father, Gudrun was impressed by pomp and circumstance. When Otto Blair was appointed Prime Minister, Gudrun wrote to him that she, her husband, and Astrid screamed so the house rang Hooray for our dear uncle, the Prime Minister. April 11th, 1891. Thereafter, she thoroughly enjoyed being a part of the social world of the ministerial Blairs, though Dagny was close to her aunt and uncle, having served as their governess for a year. She was not overly impressed with their status and what that might imply for her own. The difference between the two sisters is amusingly illustrated by their responses to an invitation from their Aunt Randy to attend the ministerial ball of January 1893, just before Dagny was to leave for Berlin. Taking it upon herself to reply for the family, Dagny wrote from Raleigh, "Thank you very much for your kind invitation. It was terribly nice that you would want us, and we, of course, would really like to come, but that is unfortunately impossible. I have been in London for a whole month, and then none of us has dresses, so we think that it would be a little too expensive. A pleasure. Gudrun and Wilhelm have already gone back to Lund, so as far as they're concerned, it is out of the question." 3 days later, Gudrun wrote from Lund, "Your enormously friendly letter came today, dear aunt, and that we actually could not resist. 1,000,000,000 thanks for your and uncle's great kindness. At this very moment I have sent for my seamstress, and together we shall do our best to ensure that your niece is not an embarrassment at the ball. Can we really also come to the palace? I'm making a white dress, too, to be safe. It would be so lovely." January 14th, 1893. Gudrun seemed to play a parental role in her relationship to Dagny. Her protective shadow is captured in the clothes she passed on to her younger sister. Clothes from another world, richer, more traditionally stylish than those Dagny came to wear. From Poland, Lucina Katarbińska wrote that Dagny usually looked sorry, barely covered, simple, plain, almost poor, but sometimes a better dress, a piece of velvet, or other fabric. These were gifts from her sister, who sent a blessed package with gifts from time to time. Another friend from Poland, Boy Zelensky, wrote that she wore with real dignity the old clothes she inherited from her rich sister. For Przybyszewska had no understanding whatsoever of a woman's need, and all the money that didn't go for strong drinks he thought wasted. It was easier to ask him for a bottle of champagne than for a pair of stockings. It was Gudrun who was sent out 3 times to bring her sister back home. The first time, in May of 1893, was prompted by Strindberg's letter to Berger Mourner about Dagny and Bengt Lidforce. The second time was again in May, 7 years later, when Dagny had gone to Paris with Vincent Brzezowski, I'm going to guess it is. Discreetly, Gudrun wrote to Randy Blair at the end of April. May 4th, we're going to Paris. She did not say why. She apparently convinced Dagny to return to Raleigh. The third time was in June 1901, after Dagny's death. She traveled with her mother to Poland to bring Dagny's children and her few possessions back to Norway. From Warsaw, she wrote her uncle, Otto Blair, asking for his help in facilitating Zenon's departure from Russia. She added, "You'll get to hear everything when we come home, though you should know that it was not a love drama, as the papers have wanted to make it." June 21st, 1901. In her letter, Gudrun was extremely sympathetic to Stash. "You can't imagine what sum Stashu has had to employ and what unbelievable difficulties the Russian authorities have created to squeeze money out of that unhappy man, to have Dagny identified, to have Zenon and her things brought out, he has spent unnecessary money 10 times over. Telegrams, endless disappointments, anxiety. Obviously, Gudrun did not know that. And there's Dagny. In 1894, she was wearing Gudrun's dress. It was primarily because Stas had failed to send Dagny's and Zenon's passports that difficulties then arose over identification of the body and the boy's passage home. But Gudrun was of no mind to blame Stas in any case. Never have we been so necessary as here for Stasio in his desperate position, so we thank God that we could come. Dagny's feelings for Gudrun have gone unrecorded. Stash's have not. He found her formidable, pompous, and disagreeable. He was particularly enraged over her suggestion in the spring of 1900, after Dagny left him and sent Zenon to her family in Scandinavia, that Gudrun keep the boy. In a letter to Ragnhild, he wrote, Gudrun wanted to capitalize on my misfortune and wanted me to give Zenon to her. I find that shocking. I would dig gold out of the earth and fetch Zenon and take both children to my mother, postmarked on arrival in Stockholm, April 11, 1900. Yet Gudrun had sympathized with Stas not only at the time of Dagny's death, but as well when Dagny left him a year and a half earlier. In March 1900, she wrote to him, Dear Stasio, yesterday I came from Stockholm, where I had visited Ragnhild and Helge for 14 days. I naturally told them about the great, incomprehensible misfortune that had befallen you and us, and Ragnhild was overwhelmed with sympathy for you, dear Stasio, and none of us have a forgiving word for Dagny in this. But when she says that she has never loved you, then she is lying. If she has ever loved any person on earth, then it's you. I long very much for a letter from you, and cannot comprehend why you don't write. Maybe you now know Dagny's address. Then give it to me immediately. March 8th, 1900. Gudrun asked if he had received her Christmas money and entreated him to send a picture of Ewa for her mother and herself. She ended with 1,000 heartfelt greetings from Astrid and your devoted sister-in-law. Gudrun was not alone in her betrayal of Dagny. All the Juel women supported Stas when Dagny left him. Their betrayal was significant and probably not an isolated moment. Yet typically they rallied around Dagny when she came home to Raleigh in the late spring of 1900. Ultimately, their affections were much stronger than their antagonisms. One is, however, left with the uncomfortable feeling that in Dagny's case, in spite of the unique sisterly bonds of which Maya Vogt wrote, there was also a sisterly resentment. Surely, with mixed feelings on both sides, Gudrun had tried to protect and correct her younger sister during her lifetime. After Dagny's death, her memory was in a profound sense entrusted to Gudrun in the lives of her children. According to Iowa, Gudrun refused to talk about Dagny because it caused her too much pain. Astrid. Astrid was born in 1869, 2 years after Dagny, 1 year after their brother had died. As a young woman, Astrid was considered frail. Whether her health was truly poor or whether she was instinctively responding to some uncommon worry her parents may have had about her in the wake of their only son's death is difficult to judge. The fact that she, like her mother and her sister Gudrun, lived well into her 80s suggests that there was a psychosomatic dimension to her frailty. Astrid's poor health became her signature. She took seriously ill and was feared to be close to death when Dagny was in Berlin. Dagny's letter home suggests her own and her family's immeasurable distress. Oh, thank God, thank God. At this moment, I got the telegram saying there is more hope. Oh, God, how desperate I've been. I have cried continually since I got the first telegram. I've been as if in a fever until I got the second telegram today. It is not possible, simply not possible, that Astrid should die and leave us. We simply can't do without her. Poor Papa and you, I see how extremely desperate you are, undated. Astrid recovered, but she was forever seeking cures for chronic illness. She and Dagny could not have been more different in this regard. Dagny continually wrote of Stasha's poor health, but she never portrayed herself as sickly, in spite of the fact that she suffered periodically from malnutrition and fatigue. And in spite of the fact that she almost died in childbirth, it is poignant that when Dagny was in real danger, traveling toward her death in Tiflis, her sister Astrid, who would live a long life, was undergoing a water cure at a Swedish health spa. All the Juel women were attending her. Minda wrote in her last letter to Dagny, Astrid has begun her water cure in Norrköping. I don't know how to say these Norwegian words. And Ragnhild is now with her. Then Gudrun is going to relieve her, for she cannot be alone. She is too weak for that. God grant that this can help her get her health back. But it is a strenuous cure, so I'll be very anxious until I see her strength return. And then I have to be here during all this and take care of the farm and cannot be with her. Meaningless, June 1901. Ragnhild and Astrid were together when the news came of Dagny's death. Ragnhild wrote to Helge, It was easier than I had thought to inform Astrid of the dreadful thing that has happened, but it was terrible, as you can imagine. And shortly thereafter, from the spa, Astrid is considerably much better and has taken this with incredible strength, so it's almost worse for me. But I take care of myself conscientiously, and then I will get better. It is absolutely necessary that I still be here. It is painful to be alone among so many strange people in such a situation as ours, you see, and even worse than to be alone if you are as nervous as Astrid. June 24th, 1901. Though Dagny was so unlike her delicate, protected young sister, her feelings for her were strong. She had been in despair at the thought of her dying. She entrusted her children to her, and she had personally dedicated her lyric poem cycle to her. It was, in fact, Astrid who had kept the manuscripts of Dagny's poems and plays and eventually passed them on to Dagny's daughter, Iwa. Yet, of all the Juel women, Astrid seems to have been the most conflicted about Dagny. If she feared she had a rival in the family, it was probably her unorthodox, oh man, older sister. Astrid and Gudrun shared the same conservative worldview. They spent much time together, and they had the same concerns with status, fashion, and important people. There was a hint of Cinderella's wicked sisters in Ragnhild's description of them in a letter to Helge from 1897. They're coming tomorrow at 11:30, and I almost have stage fright at having to receive such spoiled and critical guests. They somehow usher in an atmosphere that is strange to me. September 16th, 1897. Astrid took the news of Dagny's death remarkably well. In her consoling letter to Stash a year earlier, she had been uncomfortably willing to take emotional advantage of the situation, calling upon her dead father's disapproval of Dagny while alluding to the greater intimacy that she now felt existed between her and Stash. In early May, she wrote, Dearest Stashu, Mama and I both greatly appreciate hearing from you and getting little Ivy's picture. Thank you very much for both. So sweet and beautiful she is, and she looks so much like Xenon. And since he is the most wonderful thing we know, then you can understand that we think it's fun. Yes, statue. We had also so much looked forward to having you all home this summer. It's been such a long time, and so terribly many and difficult things have happened since that time. And now that bind us, and now, since that time and now that bind us, I think, even closer together, so that we would have twice the benefits of being together. The terrible misfortune that has befallen you and the children, yes, all of us, is such a big mystery to me that I'm struck dumb in the face of it. Absolutely can't understand it. But, dear Stashu, rest assured that Mamma and I feel for you, and perhaps are fonder of you now than before. I am so happy that beloved Papa did not experience this. It would have upset him so enormously and insurmountably. We don't doubt that you are a good and dear Papa to Ivy. That's a bullshit. I mean, he hardly saw the children. Dear Stashu, and it is so good for you that you have her constantly with you now that she must be without her mother. The poor little thing, kiss her for grandma and auntie. Many heartfelt wishes. We think so much about you. Wish so that we could do something for you. Your devoted Astrid. May 7th, 1900. Astrid watched over Dagny's children both during their early years at Raleigh and later when they came to live with Gudrun in Lund, and she lived with and cared for her mother until she died. Her nieces and nephews came to love her dearly as both a kind and very generous aunt. Certainly, though, in ways subtle or not, she must have made Dagny feel her resentment. We can only surmise what Dagny experienced growing up in between the imposing Gudrun and the frail Astrid. Dagny herself expressed only love and concern for her sisters in her surviving letters, though her most publicized relationships were with Stash and with men in general. She liked women and was liked by them in return, which must in some way be a reflection of her relationships to her sisters. Whether in a chastened or forgiving mood, she ended her long letter to her mother in February 1901 on her way back to Poland with Stash. Sweetest Mama, I'm not going to get a chance to write to Gudrun or Astrid before we get to Warsaw, so please send them this letter so they will know where we are and how we are. Stashu is naturally overjoyed to have us back. Ragnhild. Dagny found her truest friend in Ragnhild. They were both artistic and rebellious, and their bond was unusually strong. Working to reconstruct Dagny's life, it becomes impossible to imagine her without Ragnhild, the one constantly loving and accepting figure in her world. Ragnhild was the Juel's youngest daughter, born 4 years after Dagny in 1871. She was the last member of her family to whom Dagny wrote, sending her those poignant picture postcards from her journey toward Tiflis. After Dagny's death, Ragnhild wrote to Helge from the health spa at North Joping. Today is Midsummer Eve and the most beautiful weather. Chamber music everywhere. Maypole in Himmelstadlund Park, and a lot of happy people in party clothes. But we are not in party clothes, I'm afraid. God, how terrible it is about Dagny. I don't know how it is possible to ever get over such a blow, and even for a little while be able to forget that something like this has happened to one of our most dear. June 24th, 1901. When she was back in Stockholm a little more than a week later, she wrote to Munch to thank him for the interview he had given about Dagny and Christiana Dog Savis. I just wanted to thank you for what you have done for Dagny's memory at this time, and you must absolutely believe that all of us closest to her are forever grateful to you. It is terrible that her life should have such an end, and that the press now takes its pleasure in defiling her memory in any way it can. You are the only one who has said anything good about her, and I can never be grateful enough to you. You knew Dagny's and my relationship to each other, and know how I am suffering now. July 3rd, 1901. Of all the Juel sisters, Ragneld seemed to be the one with the greatest joy of life, both outwardly determined and resilient, and inwardly more at peace. She was the least beautiful of the girls, but the most ebullient. She charmed many men as a young woman, most of them artists, including the Norwegian poets Wilhelm Krag and Nils Collett Vogt, and the English pianist Frederick Delius, with whom she spent a great deal of time in Paris during the fall and winter of 1892. Ragnhild was also very close to the two men and the two artists so significant in Dagny's life, Stasch and Munch. Munch painted Ragnhild twice, first in Two Music-Making Sisters and then alone as Frau Backstrom in 1894. Commissioned by her husband Helge, this was the portrait her father asked Munch to take down. When Ragnhild died at age 37, Helge wrote him, "Dear friend, thank you for your flowers. Today they adorn her portrait." August 12, 1908. Ragnhild and Stasch were intimate friends. They exchanged letters and when at Raleigh often played and sang together. She thoroughly enjoyed his company and displayed a genuine affection for him. She also seemed to know him better than the others. When her mother and Gudrun had gone to Warsaw, she wrote to Helge, "It is wonderful to know that Mama and Gudrun are in Warsaw, and we'll see both Stashu and Zenon. If only Stashu can be honest with them, so we can stop living with this terrible uncertainty about everything." Dagny and Stasch met and fell in love in Berlin at approximately the same time as Ragnhild and Helge in Paris. In May, both sisters returned to Norway, secretly engaged. Dagny was almost 26, Ragnhild 22, and they were like best girlfriends involved in the adventure of their lives. Ragnhild wrote to Helge in the middle of June. Dagny has, you see, gotten engaged in Berlin to a Polish writer and scientist, Stanislaw Przybyszewska. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, and she's probably going back down again on the 7th of July to get married. In that regard, there'll naturally be a great to-do among us, so there can't be talk of any relaxation up here until after that time. And if Mr. Priz, I don't know if that's supposed to be Przybyszewska, meets her in Copenhagen and they get married there, then I'll probably go down there with her and then come right back home again when they go to Berlin. Dagny would so much like to meet you before she leaves. Therefore, I think you should come to Christiana on the 5th. Then we'll meet there, and then we can, at the same time, decide where we'll put you this summer. It will be, you see, a very difficult matter. When I don't want Papa to suspect anything for anything in the world, and I don't want any small town gossip either. All this about Dagny is the deepest secret. June 14th, 1893. Though through Ragnhild we catch a glimpse of Dagny's mood when she came home from Berlin with her secret. Their father was a major consideration. Ragnhild feared his rejection or his reaction to both her and Dagny's engagements, but her fears seem to have been a bit puffed up for the occasion. She was shortly able to tell Helge that her father was pleased. Through Ragnhild, oh wait, I already read that. Ragnhild was excited by the very secrecy of her relationship. Once she had eliminated her father as an obstacle, she threw another in the path. She gave Helge, coming to Raleigh for the first time in July, instructions to come in disguise, i.e., as an old friend of Astrid and Gudrun from Lund. She had won a music scholarship which she felt could be jeopardized by any talk of an upcoming marriage. Helge was not at all amused, but furtiveness was one way Ragnhild had of thumbing her nose at the bourgeoisie. Ragnhild's need to rebel is a mild reminder of what Dagny must have felt. Her younger sister, emotionally more harmonious, was nevertheless at odds with the world of Raleigh, if only temporarily. Ragnhild and Helge had already enjoyed a sexual relationship in Paris, and the knowledge made her feel powerful. A week before their wedding, she wrote, "As a matter of fact, it will be an awful day with priests and sextons, aunts and uncles, and all the necessary accessories for such an act to take place in all decency. Only the veil and white gown are missing. But then, when that purgatory is over with, we'll enjoy life to the fullest and thumb our noses and kick them all. Oh God, how we'll laugh at those who are left with the comfortable belief that again they have participated in blessing a marriage. Ah, they don't know what kind of marriage this is going to be, have never in their lives been to something like this before." November 20th, 1893. And there they are in 1895. Dagny was Ragnhild's safe haven. In the same angry letter she wrote, "Dagny is fiercely looking forward to having us down in Berlin. I got a long letter from her yesterday. She asked me and Stashu too to give you their love. I can't deny that I am more looking forward to going there than to Lund, though they'll be lavish down there too." Ragnhild, more so than Dagny, was caught in a conscious conflict between career and family. Whereas Dagny seemed to choose neither the one nor the other, Ragnhild painfully chose the latter. Once she had made the decision, her commitment was complete. She gave birth to 6 children, and they and her husband became the sum of her life. The path Ragnhild took suggests the path Dagny, too, might have taken, had she not been who she was. Ragnhild had been open to both the radical and conservative impulses in her family, and was ultimately able to resolve the conflict in favor of tradition. Dagny could not do that. Shortly after Dagny's death, Ragnhild wrote to Helge, "Oh, how hard and bitter life is. God grant that our children will never have to have a taste of what we have experienced lately, and you and I must vow to do everything so that our children's lives will be as bright as possible." 7 years later, Ragnhild died of breast cancer, only 3 years older than Dagny had been when she was shot in Tiflis. It is fitting that Ragnhild, through her many letters, shed the most intimate light on Dagny and the Juel family. For Dagny felt the greatest love for her, this warmest, most ingenuous of her sisters. As if attempting to reenact the relationship in later years, Dagny tended to choose friends younger than herself, including Stash Halmer, Christensen, Boy Zelensky, Vincent Brzezowski, and Vladislav Emmerich. Though Ragnhild cared for Dagny like no other of her sisters, she too extended her sympathies to Stash in 1900. Her letter to him has not survived, but his reply has. It began, "My dear beloved Trucha, I read your golden words with powerful feelings that shook me deeply. How thankful I am to you for your letter. You see, I'm completely dead inside, but I feel that you would like to know everything, and because of your love, must know. So on New Year's Day, she left me, postmarked on arrival in Stockholm, April 11th, 1900. Stosh went on to give his version of the events in great detail, portraying Dagny as the persecutor and himself as the martyred Christ. This is my Golgotha, he wrote, and God grant that it is not my undoing. To be sure, it was the beginning of Dagny's, not his own. The Sun. The sisters' judgment of Dagny has both a familial and an historical dimension. They were encouraged to enter the man's cultural domain, but they were judged, and they judged themselves by one standard and men by, and there's Dagny and Xenon, another. They were encouraged to be independent, but to seek fulfillment in men. Men held the special place in the Juel family. Stash wrote to his mother from Raleigh that Minda Juel adored Xenon as if he were her own. Because she has only one daughter, and the boy, who would have been my age now, died May 30th, 1897. Stash himself was a trickster, an inspired charmer, and a liar. He won the hearts and remarkably the confidence of all the Juel women. He attributed his own acceptance, as he did Zenon's, to the fact that he became the son the Juels had lost. How great a role the death of Minda's young son, whom they had named Hans Lemmick, played in her life is difficult to ascertain. Still, it is apparent that for Minda Juel, the man was sacrosanct. She idolized her husband, she idolized her grandson, and she welcomed the most unlikely son in law into her house. Her influence could not have failed to affect her daughters. When Ragnhild gave birth to her second child, Dagny wrote from Berlin, "Oh my God, if I could come and see you just for a minute." And it's a little boy again. Just think, two sons. It's a proud feeling, isn't it? Think, two sons, two sons. I must constantly think about it all day long. Two sons, little trolls with two sons. Undated but written around the new year, 1896 to 1897. Dagny's own son became her prince. She kept him with her when she left her daughter behind. She clung to him those last months in Warsaw when Stash was spending more and more time with Jadwiga Kasprowitz, and she took him with her on the long journey to Tiflis. Emmerich, the man who shot her, wrote in his letter to Xenon, "You alone meant everything to her. She, the first and only queen, bowed humbly down to you. She believed that. She came to earth simply so that you could be born." Disturbed though Emmerich was, there may have been truth in his words. The train doesn't want me to continue. The Jewels fostered an idea of the man as father, lover, and son that could only have resulted in a very ambivalent sense of self in their daughters. Again, it was Dagny who seemed to suffer the ambivalence most acutely. As a woman, she literally reshaped existing female roles. She asserted her right, like men, to develop all sides of herself, intellectual, sexual, and spiritual, and to make her choices as freely as they. Yet she was addictively attached to her husband and her son, as if only they could give her the identity she appeared so tragically to seek. There he is, Stashu, Stanislaw. How many pages are left? 146. Quite a bit, actually. About 23 pages. It's a lot of reading. 24 pages, but how many pages are... That's a full page. 23 pages. 23 and a half. Or 22 and a half. 22. About 21 and a half pages, plus this is a half page. So, all right. I will try to finish it tomorrow. That's all, bros.